Your business needs AI solutions that are not only ambitious, but also practical and adaptable. That's where Domo's AI and data products platform comes in. With Domo, you can channel AI and data into innovative uses that deliver measurable impact. Secure AI agents connect, prepare, and automate your data workflows, helping you gain insights, receive alerts, and act with ease through guided apps tailored to your role. Domo is built to meet the challenges of today's AI landscape with a robust, all-in-one platform powered by trust, flexibility, and years of expertise in data and AI innovation. Data is hard. Domo is easy. Learn how Domo can help you unlock your data's full potential at ai.domo.com. That's ai.domo.com.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening, everyone. This is me, Jonathan Alexander. I'm here to host my show, Life After Happiness. Now, today my guest is a lady named Victoria Bearden. Are you there?
I sure am.
Now, psychics are very picky, not in a bad way, but they're very into what they like to be referred to as. Some don't even like the term psychic. Some like the term medium. Some like the term spiritualist. I got your name out of the book, The Top 100 Psychics in America, and the thing is that you cover a lot of bases. I was really impressed. So, what do you like to call yourself?
Well, it's interesting because the different terms that are used for people in my business really mean different things. There's clairvoyant, and that means you see things. If you're clairaudient, you hear things. If you're a medium, usually that means you're talking to people that have crossed over. An astrologer is dealing with something that a psychic might not know anything about. I think the thing we all really hate is fortune teller, so don't call me that.
Okay.
But you're right. I do cover a lot of the bases in things in this realm, if you want to call it metaphysical or mystical or new age, because I have studied and mastered things like face reading, which is something that a lot of people don't know about. Numerology, people have heard of. So I have other areas of expertise. So actually, I can draw upon a lot of different areas when I'm doing a reading, but I am also a psychic, and I don't mind that term.
Well, the thing is, because before we did the interview, the one, I think the least known of all the things that you've done, that you say you do, is face reading. Now, the problem is, and you addressed this in our phone call last night, is that we are in an audio what do you call it? An audio.
Yeah, since we're not streaming any video here, it's a little hard to talk about face reading.
What we will do something while we face reading. What we're going to do is, they say that at any time where you list the most famous people in the world, number one is always the president of the United States. So, almost everybody and their brother knows what Barack Obama looks like.
I'd hope so.
But yes, I would hope so. That's the thing. I mean, it's not just he's not just famous because people care about him, but it's famous because it's like education. I mean, you tell our kids who he is. We have to make sure that everybody knows what he looks like. He's the president. Now.
Well, let me just interrupt you for a second because, let me just tell your audience a little bit about face reading. It's almost like palmistry, and you know what palmistry's like, I'm sure, right? Somebody reads your palm, and they're looking at things on your palm and telling you things about yourself and about your future. Of course, that's more fortune teller-like, but with the face, it's right in front of you, and all the features on the face say something about the person and maybe even about what they're more likely to do or their future in a sense. But it comes from a centuries-old Chinese system, interestingly enough.
Okay.
And now, go ahead, because you were going to go on with some other things, but I just wanted to let people know what it was about. And anybody can learn face reading, but it does you have to have a bit of a knack for it.
Right. Okay. Now, everybody knows who Obama is. Everybody knows his face. So, what do you get would you mind telling me what you get when you look at Obama's face?
Well, I'll do a really quick rundown of his face for things that people might actually say, I did notice that about him. First of all, he's got a really broad, wide, tall forehead. And the forehead has to do with your thinking style. And people that have a prominent forehead are thinkers. They're analyzers. They're taking in information. They're going over things. They have a big capacity for mental work. And so, he's that kind of person. And a lot of people that are, in positions of power, you'd think that they would be. But his forehead is probably the most prominent part of his face because, in a way, his face kind of appears almost to be long and thin sometimes. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, it's long and thin, yes.
But you'd also probably notice that it tapers down towards the chin. So probably the widest part of Obama's face would be his forehead.
Okay, yeah, I'll agree with that.
So when you think about somebody like Bill Clinton, he has a tall forehead but not as tall. And he has a really big jaw. Does that sound something like that you could think, you know what, Clinton does have one of those lantern jaws?
I've also heard, I don't know if you noticed this or not, but he has are you familiar with the name W.C. Fields?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now, I'm not familiar with his face, but this is what I remember. He had a thing on his face, and I don't know if this classifies as face reading, that Bill Clinton has too, where there's a redness on the nose.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you're aware of that.
No, I hadn't really made that association. That's a little bit way out of left field, but it's really interesting.
Just letting you know, they both have that. They both have.
Yeah, and it might be that they both had an ability as a salesman, or what was one of his famous quotes, "A sucker is born every minute," but it might not have been him. But Clinton has that big jaw. Obama doesn't have that. He has, that forehead, so he's kind of all brain sometimes. Look at Obama's eyebrows. They don't really go straight across. And the eyebrows does have a lot to do with, again, another form of the way you communicate and express and how you think about things. His eyebrows actually tilt down on the outer corners. Look at it sometimes. That's the part of Obama where he isn't as aggressive. Sometimes he does sort of backpedal, and because, that angle of the eyebrows is almost kind of like a poor me, why me, like the sad puppy. Although his eyebrows are thick, which means he's capable of complex thought, and they do go rather straight across his head, which means a person who is looking for, a level-headed solution, but they tilt down on the corners a little bit. Now, I'm going to tell you something that's really interesting about the First Lady. Her eyebrows have a very distinctive angle, which one might say is very common for women, but not necessarily. Her eyebrows tilt upwards. It's that what we call an anger angle. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So from the corners of the eyebrows on the inside, they have an angle that goes sharply up towards the forehead. And sometimes she looks kind of mad, doesn't she?
Yeah.
So it's really interesting because of the two, the First Lady and the President, the more aggressive person, who would you think that would be?
I would think it would be her.
She is definitely the more aggressive of the two. So that's something interesting. Another thing you might notice about Barack Obama is his mouth. Have you ever noticed that a lot of times it looks like he's pursing his lips, and you'll see really prominent C-shaped lines on the sides of each corner of his mouth, like he's suppressing something?
Yes.
You've seen that. He's just like tightening down his lips. That is a symbol that you see in people that are very, very tightly controlled and that are always trying to control their emotions. And, of course, one might imagine in his position or in anybody who really rises to fame why that characteristic might be a good one. The sad part of it is a lot of times people like that never really feel free to say what they really feel about things. So that often indicates a lot of repressed emotion, but it certainly indicates somebody who's able to control themselves and have a certain amount of resolve or does well under fire. Guess who also has that on her face? The First Lady.
Now,
and that now for a female to have to always be controlling her emotions and feelings, it has to be a lot harder for Michelle because she has that anger angle in her eyebrows, and she doesn't want to control how she feels or what she says about how she feels.
I forgot whether or not it was okay for me to ask you about this on the interview, but I told you about what that other psychic said about the Obama.
Oh, the divorce rumors. And I'd be happy to talk about that because, the Obamas are, whether you love them or you hate them, they're in your face every day and everybody wants to know about them. So I'd be happy to talk about that.
Do you see them getting divorced?
I don't think so, and I'll tell you why. And it might relate to what I just said about their faces. Both of these people, Michelle and Barack, have a very tight control over their own emotions. Michelle maybe a little less than Barack. She is a Capricorn, and Capricorns are goal-oriented people. They want what they want, and they're going to do whatever it takes to get up to the top of that mountain. And Barack Obama is a Leo, and Leos are strong, and they're leaders, and they're king, and they want to win, and they have really good endurance, even under the worst situations. So we have two people here who would not do anything out of step with what they thought was for the best interest of themselves and possibly even their public image. So if they were going to separate or divorce, they would do it after his term was finished, probably quite a long ways after.
Okay.
And I'm not saying that they never would, but you have two people here who are very invested in their status and public image, and I would imagine that they would probably, sometimes like royalty, rather just live separate lives and stay married than actually be the first black president and his wife and get a divorce.
Now, let me ask you a question.
You know what I'm saying here? They are not the people who would do that, and as an intuitive, as a psychic, as a face reader, I'll stand by that one.
Okay,
I'd be really surprised.
Let me give you, before we came on the air, you told me to ask you about a celebrity who you haven't heard from in a little while. And actually, I don't even know if I would call him a celebrity because he's not really liked anymore. It's O.J. Simpson.
Well, that's another interesting topic because, as some people probably know, he is sitting in jail at this time in Dade County. And he lost his appeal for clemency. He actually appealed to Barack Obama and said he was going to go on a hunger strike and says he's sick and he's dying of brain cancer. There's actually a really good chance that he will be in the news either this year or early next year because I believe he is very, very ill.
Okay.
And we could be looking at, something that could be serious enough to, the headlines might have to do with him not being on the planet anymore.
Okay.
Which, I'm sure people will have a lot of reaction to, and nobody really likes to predict things like that, but whatever is going on with him right now, I tuned into that, and it is pretty bad. Physically, mentally, emotionally, even spiritually.
He doesn't strike me as a very nice person. That's really all there. I mean, what do you get from his face? Because seriously, I mean, now things are different now. I mean, it's like.
Well, if you look at anything about Mr. Simpson, he's a Cancer, and one might say, "Oh, I thought Cancers were like nice, warm, friendly, emotional people." Well. There are also people that are very, very inwardly oriented, and in his case, not showing what's really going on inside of him emotionally and using his self-control. He had enormous anger that he was always controlling or channeling into what he did. And the big thing that you see about Simpson's face, again, with a huge jaw, this is a person who is going to just steamroll over anything or anyone that doesn't agree with him. He is extremely self-oriented and extremely aggressive. There's a calculating part of him that you can see if you look in his eye area. This is face reading, but, we're also looking at a person with a very, very strong, that there's an energy in him of self-orientation. I mean, the guy's a quarterback. He's a superstar. He really doesn't put himself in other people's shoes. He only thinks about himself, and one might give him a lot of excuses from his early life or whatever, but it doesn't really matter. And actually, another cancer celebrity is Mike Tyson. They're both cancers.
Right.
Cancer the crab, which is interesting, but we have two really different people because Tyson, as aggressive and intense and, over the top as he might be, actually is a very emotional person, and he probably does feel like he can put himself in other people's shoes sometimes.
Well, it's funny that you bring those two up because I noticed something, and I don't know if you're, if the plastic surgeons are gonna, say something about you, but when you change someone's face, does it change their appearance?
If a person gets plastic surgery. And all the face readers love to use Michael Jackson as an example of this. Or even a female gets a nose job or a facelift or whatever, or anybody does. You will begin to take on the characteristics of that new thing, but you never really lose your core tendencies.
But you want to know something about Michael, not to cut you off, can I tell you something that I heard about Michael Jackson?
Sure.
Okay, and it sort of goes with what, in line with what you said. I heard that the reason he had all that plastic surgery was because, they say it was because of a skin condition, but this is another explanation that I heard. When he was born, and not a lot of people know what he looks like, but when he was younger, he looked exactly like his father.
Mm-hmm.
And he hated his father.
Mm-hmm.
So what he did was he went and he got as much plastic surgery as he could to not look like his father.
Well, and what he did, what Jackson did in particular was, on the one hand, he gave himself a child's nose, and he gave himself a lot of female characteristics. And he really, that part of him that really does live in Never Never Land, sort of a Peter Pan, almost made himself look like an elf or something. And
right.
If you really think about that, he did live in another world. And the way he created his appearance fit more with the world that he lived in his own mind. And certainly probably really wanted to divorce himself as much as possible from his father and any
right.
associations with his father. But that's the truth. But you know that's an interesting point about changing. You change your face, you change your life. Yeah, but those core issues that are yours are always going to be yours underneath there somewhere. So if they're still causing you problems, it really won't matter if you change your face.
Now they say, you know who they say is the most recognizable face in the world?
No, who?
Muhammad Ali. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting.
I mean, aside from presidents, I mean, and I guess that's probably true. I would have to say, as far as fame is concerned, if I had to name, let's assume that I couldn't name the president, I would have to say that the two most famous people that you probably name would be Elvis Presley and Muhammad Ali.
Now, Muhammad Ali actually has a great face to talk about too, but he has that wonderful anger angle in the eyebrows.
Yeah.
And a lot of emphasis around the jaw and the mouth. But let's not spend the whole time on face reading. Ask me some other questions.
Okay, I apologize.
Oh, that's
now,
okay. It's interesting.
when you do, they say that I think you said that you were an expert astrologer. Is that true?
Oh, absolutely. I've been practicing astrology for years, and I use that along with my psychic abilities to make predictions. That's how I've predicted every presidential election since George Bush Sr. in public, mostly on the news, and I've never been wrong, using both my intuitive and the astrology. I've also predicted events like the LA Northridge earthquake and many, many things. Oftentimes I'll have a vision or a dream or an impression, and I'll check out the astrology and see if it backs it up. And then if it really is all lining up, that's when I'll just really go for it and go ahead and put it out as a prediction. But, astrology is something that I think a lot of people say, oh, I read it in the newspaper, it's online, and it's just so much fun, but it's pretty powerful. Astrologers were employed by the British and the Germans in World War II to try to get advantage over each other, and it was really interesting that actually had maybe a little bit to do with some of the results of World War II.
Right. I mean,
people knew that Hitler believed in all of that stuff. Well, a lot of the British really understood how to use astrology too, and they used it against the Germans.
I think the way that I understood it was that Hitler was a very paranoid person. That he was.
Well, I'm just talking about the astrology part, though, and the Germans were following astrology, and the British actually leaked astrological propaganda to the Germans. But this is a whole nother story. And I know we don't have all day. So, I actually am an astrologer with at least 30 years of experience. Of course, I keep saying that, so it's probably more by now.
Now, why don't you give us your website?
My website is astrologervic.com. And that's astrologer, like what I do, and the first three letters of my first name, Victoria. Okay. And people can also, astrologervic.com, and people can find me on Facebook and such as well, and Twitter. But then my website's a good place to start. So if people want to know more about me, they can go there.
That's good. And the thing is that do you automatically see something when you meet them? Or does it take a while?
In terms of when I do a reading for somebody?
Yes.
Oh, when I do readings for people, especially in the very initial phases of it, I usually try not to let them tell me anything. Because basically, if anybody goes to a reading with somebody who's actually legit, you don't want to tell them your backstory or what you want to know. You just want to let them tell you, because then you'll know if they're really on target with the things that are going on for you. So even if I wasn't using astrology, I really like to just go in cold and just tell the person what I'm seeing. And we go from there. And I think that's good advice for anybody getting a reading. Don't tell them a lot, at least in the beginning, until you know that they're actually getting something for you.
Well, that's funny that you say that, because, like, when I interview I've interviewed a lot of models, and I've interviewed a lot of psychics, and that's the difference. If the models are plan freaks, not that that's bad, but they go over every question to death, and that's great that they do that. The psychics just don't tell me anything. Don't tell me anything. And I guess that's fine. I mean, if they're okay with it.
Well, yeah, I mean, you want people that are going to a reading, you want to know that person really is able to tell you something that's going to help you. And a lot of times people go in and they'll just spill the beans and say, I want to know if my husband's going to leave me. And then, of course, the psychic's going to, play off of your feelings and your emotions, just because of being human. And if they're not legit, they'll be able to sort of manipulate you that way. And that's not what I'm here to do. I just want to give people information that's going to help them make better decisions, because I don't think the future is set in stone. I think that there are very, very likely things, things that are most likely going to happen in the future that we can look at. And, of course, if you don't like the direction that something's going and a psychic tells you, you get to change your mind about things or maybe even alter the future.
Mm-hmm.
Because if the future was set in stone, I'd get another job. This wouldn't be fun at all.
Yeah, that is true. It wouldn't be fun because it would be like,
you were born under a bad star. Too bad, too sad. That would be terrible.
Right. I mean, you were, it doesn't, don't bother voting. Obama's going to win or something.
Well, but again, if I do percentages and I am predicting a presidential election, the reason that I've never been wrong in my predictions every time was because there was an overwhelming energy moving in one direction, and there was always a percentage chance that it would go the other way. But when you make a prediction, anybody who's a prognosticator of any kind, whether or not you're, the gambling bookie or whatever, you're going to look at statistics of some kind, and that might sound strange coming from a psychic astrologer, but that's how it works. And I will tell you something, and I had to have discussions about this with clients and colleagues all the time. There is a certain amount of what happens that I think is fate. I think fate has a free hand, whatever you want to call it, God's will, fate, what have you. However, that doesn't mean that there isn't a lot that we can make decisions about that will change our destiny. I still think there is a destiny. And that might be a controversial point. Maybe you'll have to interview me again about that.
Hope so. I hope we can have you back. That'd be great. My question is that when you see, like, are you able to just tell someone's future from their face? Because you didn't say anything about Obama's future on his face. You just said...
Well, no, I talked about characteristics because face reading a lot of times really is more, initially people want to know, like, well, what about that person's face can tell me more about them? What about some secret things I need to know about them or what they're more likely to do? And when you look at the future, that's a more refined version of face reading. So I'm going to give you an answer about that. Just like palmistry can tell you all sorts of things about the person and how they act, and there is sort of a way of looking ahead as far as where the person is likely to go. But that, once again, is a very refined version of face reading that most face readers probably don't even know how to do. So there's the cryptic answer to that question. There's a lot of ways to, quote unquote, look at the future. Or a lot of ways you could say, well, are tea leaves accurate, Victoria? Well, they can be if the person reading them is actually psychic.
Or tarot card reading.
Yeah, any of that. If the person who's doing the reading isn't accurate or really isn't on it or isn't psychic enough, even if they know everything about the tarot cards or the tea leaves, they're not going to give an accurate reading. So it's not so much the tools, because for most psychics, the tools are just a way to stay grounded. It's almost like a prop. It means something, but if you don't know how to, work with that, it doesn't really matter. You could be reading crumbs in a pizza box or chicken bones and either be a good psychic or a bad psychic, or just not have any props and just be clairvoyantly picking stuff out of the ether, which a lot of us do. I knew one psychic who, and this is actually really old school spiritualism, but all she had in the room with her and her client when she did her readings was a glass of water. And people used to think she was drinking the water. She wasn't. She was looking at it. She would see things, believe it or not, in the glass of water. Kind of like a crystal ball, but, cheaper.
That's good. What did she do? I wonder what she would tell with the fly would fly into the glass.
What was that?
I wonder what she would say when the fly would fly into the glass.
Well, that would be probably, I don't know, a plane crash?
Yeah.
Over the ocean? Uh-oh.
Well, I see a helicopter. It's flying over the ocean. And
Well, that's very funny, actually. But I guess the point of the matter is it's not so much the different kinds of outer manifestations, like does the person wear robes and wear a turban, or do they just look like a regular person on the street? It's like, well, what can you really do, And that's, a lot of spirit mediums. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. If you're not on TV and you don't have, a teleprompter telling you somebody's mother died, can you really tell this person how their loved one died and what they want to tell them and where they hid the money?
Right, where they hid the money.
Well, that's an old joke about that. But, I mean, I've only met and I do spirit medium work, but it is not my main job description, and I'll tell you why. It takes a lot out of you. Doing psychic work anyway is challenging because you're walking into somebody's, psychic space, their energy. But I always really give a lot of credit to true spirit mediums because it's exhausting. And sometimes it can even be a little scary.
The reason I agree with you there, and I'll tell you why. I've always gotten the impression from the psychics that I've interviewed is that they're these warm people that you can just walk up to and hug. They're extremely warm. They're extremely open and everything. And I'm thinking, I interviewed Litany Burns, okay? And Litany Burns was this lady who did the Son of Sam case. Well, Son of Sam, I mean, grisly murder and everything. I mean, how does a woman or a person open themselves up to something, that's horrible and terrible and,
Well, you have to have your psychic protection in place, and I'll answer that question for you because most of us that are in this line of work, we didn't, when we were little, we didn't wake up one day and go, I want to be a psychic. It's a calling that usually finds you. And oftentimes people that do this kind of work are coming, well, at least I would imagine from my own experiences, from a great place of compassion, a desire to be of service to people and to help, because the things that we have to do and the things that we see are not easy a lot of the time. And particularly people that work with crimes and missing children and things like that, psychics that do that, it can be heartbreaking. So you have to be coming from a very compassionate, altruistic place and also learn psychic protection techniques so you don't lose your mind. And I think sometimes, and I've seen this with certain very, very sensitive intuitives, it is so hard that they start to kind of lose their grip on their own reality sometimes.
Right. Well, it's been a lot of fun having you on. I'll send you the link to the show so you can put it on your website. Is that okay with you?
Oh, super.
Right.
Are we about at the end of our time? Because this was really a great talk. I had a good time with you.
Thank you, and I hope I can have you back. Okay?
Oh, I'd love to.
Right, talk to you soon.
Okay.
Bye.